The largest asylum on Earth was a city of nightmares. On a sprawling campus in Brentwood, New York, a city was built. Not a city of commerce or homes, but a self-sufficient city for the mentally ill. It had its own power plant, its own fire department, its own police force, post office, and even its own railroad station. At its peak, it was the largest psychiatric hospital in the entire world, a size no other facility has ever surpassed. This was Pilgrim State Hospital. It opened with a revolutionary promise to provide humane, restorative care. But as the decades passed, that promise decayed. The world's largest asylum became a city of nightmares, a place of systematic abuse, radical experiments, and forgotten souls. In 1954, nearly 14,000 patients were housed inside its walls, a population larger than many surrounding towns. Yet, within this immense institution, thousands of lives were systematically dismantled. Some accounts estimate that as many as 2,000 lobotomies were performed here, with some claiming that 1 out of every 25 lobotomies in the United States happened within its walls. When its doors were finally, mostly, shuttered, thousands of patients were released, and many of them simply vanished from society. So what really happened inside the largest asylum on Earth? To understand how a place of healing became a factory of despair, we have to go back to the beginning. In the early 20th century, New York City's asylums were dangerously overcrowded, a problem spiraling out of control. The proposed solution was radical in its scale and ambition. In 1929, the state approved the construction of a new kind of institution, a farm colony designed to be a self-sufficient community where patients could find peace and purpose through therapeutic work. Named for Dr. Charles W. Pilgrim, a former commissioner of mental health, the hospital was built on over 800 acres of Long Island farmland, an area that would eventually expand to nearly 2,000. This wasn't just a hospital. It was conceived as a city dedicated to healing. It had vast farms, a bakery, a laundry, and a network of buildings connected by underground tunnels. The whole design was centered on the idea that productive work and a tranquil environment could restore mental health. When Pilgrim State Hospital officially opened its doors on October 1st, 1931, it represented a beacon of hope for thousands of families. For a fleeting moment, it seemed that America had finally found a humane answer to the crisis of mental illness. But that grand vision began to crumble almost as soon as it was realized. The hospital was designed to house around 12,500 patients, but the need was far greater. It opened with just 100 patients, but within 9 months, the population had swelled to over 2,000. By its peak in 1954, it held a staggering 13,875 patients, far exceeding its intended capacity. The long, airy corridors designed for calm became claustrophobic and chaotic. Private rooms meant for one became crowded dormitories where patients slept in endless rows of cots, stripped of all privacy and dignity. Then, World War II made a bad situation catastrophic. As doctors and nurses were drafted into military service, the hospital faced a severe staffing shortage. It wasn't unheard of for a single nurse to be responsible for 100 patients on a night shift. Individualized care became an impossibility. The therapeutic farm work, once a restorative activity, devolved into forced labor just to keep the massive institution running. Under the immense pressure of overcrowding and understaffing, the very fabric of the institution frayed. Patients were no longer seen as individuals on a path to recovery, but as a mass of bodies to be managed and controlled. The promise of humane treatment evaporated, replaced by the grim reality of containment. The hopeful asylum was rapidly descending into a warehouse for the forgotten. As control slipped away, doctors at Pilgrim State turned to increasingly desperate and brutal measures, embracing new medical procedures they believed were cures. These treatments weren't designed to heal the mind, so much as to subdue it. Patients were restrained in straitjackets for days on end for minor infractions. Ice baths and wet packs, where patients were wrapped tightly in cold, wet sheets, were used to induce compliance. Then came the shock therapies. In the mid-1930s, the hospital began using insulin shock therapy, which involved injecting patients with massive doses of insulin to induce a coma and seizures, a process they believed could reset the brain. Many patients suffered permanent brain damage, and some never woke up. This was followed by electroshock therapy, often given without anesthesia or muscle relaxants. The violent convulsions could be strong enough to shatter teeth and break bones. But the most infamous procedure performed at Pilgrim was the prefrontal lobotomy. Between the 1940s and 1950s, some sources estimate that up to 2,000 lobotomies were performed here, many in the Central Medical Building, number 23. The procedure was horrifyingly simple. A surgeon would insert an ice pick-like instrument through the patient's eye socket, severing connections in the frontal lobe of the brain. Doctors claimed high success rates, but success was often just a measure of how quiet and manageable the patient became. In reality, the procedure often erased their personality, leaving behind a docile, empty shell. The case of Beulah Jones, who was subjected to both electroshock and a lobotomy in the 1950s and was left severely impaired for life, became a symbol of these horrors. Researchers later concluded that these procedures didn't cure mental illness. In some cases, they may have even caused schizophrenic symptoms. The beginning of the end for institutions like Pilgrim State came in a small pill. The development of thorazine and other antipsychotic drugs in the 1950s offered a way to manage symptoms without permanent institutionalization. At the same time, a nationwide movement known as deinstitutionalization began to take hold, driven by public outrage over the conditions in asylums and a new belief in community-based care. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Pilgrim's population began to steadily decline as patients were discharged. Parts of the sprawling campus were closed down and fell into disuse. In 1996, New York State officially consolidated the remaining patients from the nearby Kings Park and Central Islip Psychiatric centers onto the Pilgrim campus, closing those massive facilities for good. But the final, decisive blow was mass deinstitutionalization. The state promised that every patient released would receive support from a robust network of community mental health services. This promise was systematically broken. When the state moved to close the majority of Pilgrim, thousands of patients, many of whom had known no other life for decades, were released into a world they were completely unprepared for. The promised community clinics were underfunded or never even materialized. Some patients were sent to group homes, while others returned to families unable to care for them. And many, as one report grimly noted, simply vanished. Studies suggest a large percentage ended up homeless, trading the confinement of the asylum for the dangers of the street. Today, Pilgrim Psychiatric Center still exists, but it's a mere shadow of its former self, with only a few hundred patients. The rest of the once mighty city of the insane sits abandoned, a haunting landscape of decay. Over 50 original buildings were demolished in 2003, with more torn down around 2012, leaving a broken collection of architectural ghosts. Vines crawl up the brick facades, and trees grow through the collapsed roofs of buildings that once housed thousands. The former farmland, once worked by patients, became the campus of Suffolk County Community College in 1974. A massive redevelopment project called the Heartland Town Center has been planned for decades on the abandoned land, but has yet to fully materialize. And then there is the cemetery. On the grounds of Pilgrim and other nearby former asylums, quiet plots of land hold the remains of thousands of patients whose bodies were never claimed by family. Their graves are marked not with names, but with simple, numbered stones. Their identities, like their stories, have been largely lost to time. Pilgrim State Hospital wasn't an anomaly. It was the extreme result of a system that chose mass containment over individual care, that called brutal procedures treatment, and that, when it finally collapsed, abandoned the very people it was meant to protect. The story of Pilgrim State is a dark chapter in the history of mental health care, but its lessons are more relevant than ever as society continues to grapple with how to care for its most vulnerable citizens. The silent, crumbling ruins in Brentwood are a stark monument to a failed dream, a reminder of the human cost of good intentions gone horribly wrong. They stand as a testament to the thousands of forgotten lives that were lived and lost within its walls. If you found this exploration into our dark past compelling, please consider subscribing to support more investigations like this. The asylum's buildings may be empty now, but the paths worn into the earth by patients walking in endless circles are still there, faint but visible. These paths, and the thousands of numbered graves, ask a silent, haunting question. How does a society measure its humanity, if not by how it treats those it has chosen to forget?